Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name is Lefebvre, and today we are on day 15 of our 31 days of watercolor practice. Today I'm going to show you two techniques to create simple ocean or lake water. So let's jump in and get started. Okay friends, today we are going to be painting a really fun watercolor subject, and that is water. We're going to be painting some ocean water. This is part one of two. Tomorrow we are going to be specifically looking at creating waves, but this is more of like a basic ocean and little tweaks you can make to make it look a little bit more realistic or give it a little bit more depth. So I have taped off two different sections here just to show you two different ways to do it. And I've also just divided the painting. I think that's like a quarter of the way to create a little bit of sky, and I painted it a light blue and it's completely dry so we can focus on the water. So the first technique we're going to do, we've done a few times now, and that's just a simple gradient. Sometimes I will see in beginner work when someone's painting an ocean, it will just be one flat color all the way across. But tweaking it slightly to have a gradient of dark to light or light to dark can really create a lot of depth. Now, tomorrow, when we kind of focus a bit more on waves, you'll see where this comes into play. But typically, what I see with ocean photography or just when I'm looking at the water, the closer the waves or the ocean is to us, the darker and the more detail it is, the further to the horizon line, the lighter it is. So just looking at a couple simple photos here, the further away it is into the horizon, the lighter it is, the closer it is, the darker it is. We will be doing the waves tomorrow, so we're not focusing on that right now, but I want to show you just how to create a gradient again to kind of get that look. So my sky is dry. I'm going to pick a nice blue color. I just have to see what kind of blues I have in here. I don't know this palette as well. Let's find a good blue. Maybe like I'm just mixing all the blues here. Okay, and I'm going to start down here and move my way up. I didn't wet it up first, but if that works better for you after we've done gradients so many times, do that. Now see how just changing the gradient from dark to light up front gives it a bit more depth, right? It's not as flat as if you were to just go right across. And then tomorrow when we add waves, it's gonna really make a big difference. We're gonna do another one. So that's a simple way to do it. Obviously, if you're creating an ocean painting, you wouldn't just do this. You could create little mountains in the back. You could have done clouds, whatever you want. But the first thing I want you to think of when you're doing any kind of landscape, create that contrast and depth through using your gradients. It's so important. Okay, even my sky could have used a little bit more of a gradient from dark to light. But I want you to also start looking at maybe reference photos or even in real person what things look like. Are they lighter? Are they darker the further or closer they are away? The other thing is, if you look at a beach photo, like maybe like a tropical beach, you'll notice that the further the water is out, it's darker. And then the closer it is to the shore, it's a bit more turquoise. So depending on what kind of perspective or what kind of ocean painting you're going for, all that changes. So there's my first little one. Again, practice your gradients. I know we've done this a few times, but it is so important. The second one is a dry brush technique. Now, in order to do this, we need to create our ocean first. So I'm just going to do my gradient again. Okay, I'm using an ultramarine here, which is a nice, is it warm blue? Okay, so dark to light. Make it nice and dark at the front. And then you need to let it completely dry. Okay, so let it completely dry and we'll come right back. Okay, now that both of them are dry, I'm going to show you the technique called dry brushing, and it's just what it sounds like. You need a dry brush. So we do not want any water on our brush. Now, my paints are already wet. They're not soaking wet. There's not a puddle, but I want my brush dry, and I'm really hoping this works out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dry brush. It is damp. It's not completely dry like a brand new brush that we haven't used yet, but it is pretty dry. There's no water in there. I'm going to go right into my paints. Okay, maybe the one in my palette. And all I'm going to do is skim across the surface of my ocean water. You can give like a little bit of a wave to it if you like, but what this does is it creates texture that mimics ocean water or waves or like a little ripple in the water. Now you may want to practice this on other paper or again in your sketchbook. There's no reason why you can't do this in your sketchbook. But sometimes it might take a little bit to kind of really get that dry brush effect. Okay, but you see that little bit of texture really also creates depth. So I'm going to grab a little bit more. I'm going to try and make it darker towards the front. Now, if your pans are completely dry, it's not going to work. You might need to wet it up a little bit. Okay, put a little bit in there. But if it's too wet, you're going to get a solid line. Okay, I don't want to do it there, but you'll get like a solid line. Right? We don't want that. Dry your brush off on your paper towel. Okay, and then pick up some of that paint. And you're just going to drag it across. Now, if you have textured paper, like a cold pressed paper, this works even better because the texture of the paper, it will catch on to some of those darker areas and give you a really nice texture. Let me see if I can show you. Here's a textured paper. Okay, and this dry brush, see how it picks up on that toothy texture? And you get just a little sparkle of the white paper underneath. All right, let's try with, and that's with my flat brush. Let's try with my round brush. Again, just going to dry it off my paper towel, and you're just going to skim it across. You can almost hear a scratch, and that mimics like the little sparkle in water. Okay, you can try with your round brush as well. You might get some more solid lines. And we're going to touch more on this, like creating waves. We're already kind of creating those ripples and waves with this dry brush technique. But look at that. It takes it to the next level. Honestly. Okay, let's try it with the ultramarine one. So my brush, it was just wet. I'm drying it a bit. There's no puddle in there, but it's not completely dry. You should feel kind of like this tacky texture, like it's not really wet. It's kind of like sticky. You don't want a puddle in there when you're doing this. And I'm just gonna skim it across. Now, when you are creating waves, which again, we're going to touch on more tomorrow, and I'll probably repeat myself, the closer they are to you, the darker they are, and the bigger and the longer they are. So you can see my strokes are getting they're kind of long, closer to us. And then as I start to go further away, oops, I gotta remember which one is which. I'm going to do lighter. Oh my gosh, I keep messing up which blue it is. Lighter and shorter strokes. That also helps to create depth. I'm not pressing with this too much. Little short strokes back there. Okay, but again, we'll get more into that later. Okay, but nice and dark, close to the center. If it's too dry, add a little bit of water. Tap it on your paper towel. And you're breaking up those bristles again, kind of like we did with the trees. And there you go. Okay, so there is a very simple way to do the water. Gradient, you could just leave it like that so it's super calm, or you can do slight dry brush to create this really cool kind of ripply wave technique. So there is that one for today. Practice this. The key is having really light pressure with your brush. You're not pushing down too hard. You're just think of that you're skimming the surface of your painting and you're just kind of creating this scratchy texture, but like, look how good that looks. It's awesome. Okay, so join me tomorrow for our part 2, where we're gonna go a little bit more in depth with watercolor waves. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.